It's 5 o'clock and welcome everyone to the Saugeen Shores Committee of Adjustment for Monday, August the 17th, 2020, and I now call this meeting to order. Item number 2 is the acknowledgement of any pecuniary interest. I would remind members either to make their statements now or anytime it comes up on the agenda. Item number 3 is the adoption of minutes. Minutes have been circulated. Would somebody wish to make a motion to adopt the minutes, please? That'd be by Councillor Rich, seconded by Councillor Grace. Any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. There's no additional business, so we'll move on to the public hearings. The first one is item number 5.1, which is a minor variance A-2020-026, Anthony and Anna De Silva, with the municipal address of 256 Windsor Boulevard in the former town of Southampton. Ms. Mugabe, please.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
An application has been submitted by Anthony and Anna Da Silva for their property 256 Windsor Boulevard in Southampton. 2 weeks ago, I was out on a site visit and took some photographs of the property. I'm not sure my slides are coming through.
You okay, Mr. Chair, with proceeding while we figure this out?
Do you want me to share my screen, Barbara?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So 2 weeks ago, I was out on a site visit to the property and took a couple of photographs. This is a view of the front of the property, the photograph taken from Windsor Boulevard. As you can see, it's a single-story cottage with a covered porch. Oh. And there's a deck to the right in behind the bush. Again, okay. So looking at the cottage from Victoria Street, this is a north view of the property showing the exterior side yard. The next slide. This is the backyard of the property. It contains 3 sheds. I understand 2 of them are water damaged and will be replaced. A photograph of the interior side yard. The applicants are proposing to tear down the deck and extend the cottage into that area. They are also proposing a new attached deck, which will be 0.41 meters from the interior lot line. The cottage is surrounded by residential uses, mostly cottages. It is serviced by municipal water and sewer. Windsor Boulevard is a year-round municipal road. The application seeks to reduce the rear yard depth from 7.5 meters to 4.57 meters, and the interior side yard setback from 1.2 meters to 0.4 meters at the narrowest point. Approval of the minor variance would allow an addition to the existing cottage and deck. The next slide. The property is designated primary urban communities in the Bruce County official plan and residential in the Saugeen Shores official plan. The property is zoned residential first density. We did not receive any objections from the commenting departments and agencies that were consulted on the application. We did not receive any comments from members of the public. With respect to the 4 tests of a minor variance, Does the variance maintain the intent and purpose of the official plan? I would say yes, a cottage is a permitted use. The variance maintains the intent and purpose of both the official plan and zoning bylaw. The variance is desirable from the standpoint that development is an improvement on the site and is positive change in the neighborhood. The variance is minor in nature, in the sense that development will have no adverse impact on the functionality of the site, nor will it impact adjoining neighbors. It is noted the neighbors have not expressed any objection to the reduced yard setbacks. There's no adverse impact to the environment or on municipal functions. The proposed application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance. Just to recap, minor variances are requested to facilitate cottage and deck extensions. The application is consistent with the provincial policy statement, upholds the objectives of the Saugeen Shores official plan, and represents good land use planning. The application satisfies the 4 tests of a minor variance. We are recommending approval based on the conditions on the decision sheet. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Mugabe. One moment here. Are the De Silvas, if Mr. De Silva would like to comment on its application?
I really have nothing much further to add that Ms. Mugabe has already indicated. The initial application, the permit was approved five years ago. We added a minor variance because we changed the plan slightly to put a proposed bathroom at the back of the addition that we're proposing, and that was the cause for the minor variance. So we've worked with Ms. Mugabe here and have addressed any questions and concerns that she had. And I'm here and prepared to answer any questions that council may have regarding this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. De Silva. Committee, any comments, please? Deputy Mayor Matheson.
Thank you. I have a slight, not a problem, but a question for Mr. De Silva. You want to reduce the side setback from 1.2 meters to 0.4 meters. So roughly from 3.9 to 1.3 feet. Is there enough room for the workers to be able to get in and out of there when the fence is there? We just changed our bylaw a few years ago to reduce it down to the 1.2 meters. And I worry about the closeness in case safety crews or workers have to get in and out of there. How are they going to be able to work on the side of that when there's only 1.3 feet?
Mr. De Silva?
Yeah, there is, I think the reduction is 1.3 feet, but I believe there's still just under 4 feet there for people to get by. I think the setback is to be 5 feet. And when the house was designed according to the plan, the house was not exactly square to the property line, so it's slightly over extended into the 5 foot area. So we're asking for this sort of minor variance there, but there is sufficient room to come in from the side. And that area where there is the variance required at the front, there is going to be a deck. So it's not actually built up property. It's a deck area, so that there shouldn't be any problem. And you know, the deck, I mean, the kind of repair that would be necessary would be minor with respect to any deck repairs or work that would need to be done.
Even looking at it, how do you manage the property? Cut grasses was too narrow to run a lawnmower down there.
Well, there's essentially no grass there now. We've put a hedge along
at
there.
The front, and then you've got your chain link fence.
Yeah, and the chain link fence, which divides the property, there's the hedge is planted along there. So essentially, you know, it's a cedar hedge. Currently, they're about 6-7 feet high, and will in all likelihood, of course, grow higher and out. So essentially that area will not be grass. It's essentially just a hedge to separate the two properties.
Mr. Silva, do you know the distance from, I'm looking at a picture of it here, the distance from your deck at the moment to the fence? What's the distance?
It's 5 feet up. That's my understanding of, according to the plan and the drawing that was made up 5 years ago.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other comments from the members? Somebody like to make a motion to accept it based on the decisions, or with the subject to the decision sheet that we have. That'd be moved by Mr. Legault and seconded by Councillor Rich. Any questions? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay. Our next item is item 5.2. This is a minor variance, A-2020-031. Mr. Ryan and Tasha Martin at the municipal address of 233 Saugeen Beach Road, and I believe it's in the former township of Saugeen. Ms. Mugabe.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Could I have the slides up, please? Firstly, I should apologize for the mail out that went out with an incorrect address. The correct address for the property is 233, not 223 Saugeen Beach Road. I believe subsequent mail outs had the correct address. The next slide. So this shot was taken from the T intersection at George Street and Saugeen Beach Road. It's a view from the east side of the property, from the east side looking at the property. And as you can see, there's a hedge tree in the interior side, in the exterior side yard. It's a visual screen from the road. A north view of the property. The existing cottage, it's a single-story cottage situated quite far back from the roadway. This is intended to show the interior side yard, which is the west side of the property. And this is the backyard of the property. As you can see, there's another hedgerow of trees, which is a visual screen from adjoining neighbors. The property is surrounded by other cottages. Servicing is by way of municipal water and private septic system. Saugeen Beach Road is a year-round municipal road. The application seeks to reduce the front yard setback from 6 meters to 3.1 meters and the side visibility triangle from 10 meters to 8.5 meters. Approval of the minor variance application would facilitate the construction of a replacement dwelling. The property is designated primary urban community in the Bruce County official plan and shoreline residential in the town's official plan. The zoning is first density residential with special provisions relating to lot area and being able to accommodate development. There were no objections from the commenting agencies and departments. The town of Saugeen Shores requires a condition of approval that the developer work with a professional engineer to determine the appropriate side visibility triangle, and that the developer convey the calculated site visibility triangle to the town to ensure maintenance of the triangle. It is explained that the conveyance also enables the entire traveled portion of the road to be located within the right-of-way. We received several comments from members of the public. Sarah Miller of 46 George Street, she objects to the proposal. She's concerned about site visibility at the intersection, and she's interested in future plans for the road. She subsequently submitted written comments which have been made available to the committee for their review, but we had already finalized the report, so they have not been incorporated into the report. David Hollinger of 229 Saugeen Beach Road does not object to the proposal per se, but he has expressed concerns with respect to drainage, to traffic, and to reduced number of parking spaces. Philip Wright and Kirsten Esman of 43 George Street object to the proposal. The objections are around sightline limits and parking reduction, road measurements, septic system, and drainage issues. Douglas Dawson of 225 Saugeen Beach Road also objects to the proposal. He gave no reason for the objection. Tom Montag of 284 Saugeen Beach Road expressed two concerns around the future road widening of Saugeen Beach Road and safety at the intersection. Then Jane Manson of 237 Saugeen Beach Road also objects to the proposal, citing vehicular and foot traffic concerns at the intersection. To address some of the public comments, in regards to parking concerns, the applicant is providing 2 on-site parking spaces, which meets the parking requirement of the zoning bylaw. Drainage plans will be submitted later in the approval process to address drainage matters. The applicant has agreed to cut back 3 meters the tree hedge from the intersection to ensure site visibility. The engineers on both sides are working to address some of the technical matters pertaining to the road and the intersection. Respecting the 4 tests of a minor variance, does the variance maintain the intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw? I would say yes. A dwelling is a permitted use in the designation and zone. The proposal meets the intent of both the official plan and the zoning bylaw. The variance is desirable. The policy makes provisions for property owners to redevelop their properties, which improves the site and the neighborhood. Is the variance minor in nature? It is not expected that permitting the variance will have an adverse impact on the character of the area, nor will it affect the ability of adjacent property owners to use their property for permitted uses. The variance is minor in nature. There is no adverse impact on the environment and on municipal functions. The proposed application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance. Just to recap, minor variances have been requested to facilitate the construction of a replacement dwelling. The application is consistent with the provincial policy statement, upholds the objectives of the official plan, and represents good land use planning. The application satisfies the 4 tests of a minor variance. Staff recommend approval subject to conditions on the decision sheet. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Mugabe. If we could return to the meeting, please. There we go. Mr. and Mrs. Martin, do you wish to address the committee?
I'm representing Mr. and Mrs. Martin today.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson.
Shall I begin?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ron Davidson. I am a planning consultant, and I do, as I said, represent Mr. and Mrs. Martin with regard to this application. I did prepare a planning report, which was submitted in conjunction with the minor variance application. It goes into detail about how it does pass the 4 tests of a minor variance. Barbara has gone through that. I am not going to go through my report, but I will touch upon a couple of important points. I guess starting at the beginning, the request is to erect, it is a 2-story dwelling, but it'll have a very modest footprint. The footprint will be just over 1,240 square feet in size. So it's not a monstrosity by any stretch that's going on this property. In order to make room for the septic system and a place to park, That's 2 parking spaces, which, as you heard, does conform to the zoning bylaw. The footprint is being pushed up near the north end of the property, and therefore relief is being requested not only from the front yard requirement, but also the site visibility triangle. So with regard to the front yard setback, the intent and purpose of a front yard requirement is to make sure that development along any given road from one property to the next maintains a consistent and orderly setback from the road allowance. So in this regard, it's very important to review in the review of this application to note that the dwelling located on the property to the immediate west actually appears to have a 0 meter front yard. It looks like it's actually encroaches, or if we want to be on the safe side, has a 0 meter front yard setback. There's no dwelling to the immediate east because there's the municipal road there. But it's worth noting that the tree hedges on both sides of the property, the east and west, break up the view of the streetscape in this area. And based on that, and of course the fact that the house to the west, or cottage to the west, doesn't provide any setback, it's, I think, in my opinion anyways, that a reduced front yard would not be disruptive in any way to the streetscape along this stretch of Saugeen Beach Road. So that's with regard to the front yard. And then there's the site visibility triangle, which appears to be an issue for neighbors, but not for your staff. And I'm not going to try to put words in your staff's mouth. They're on the meeting with us, so maybe we can hear from them later. But the proposal is to reduce the site visibility triangle from 10 meters down to 8.5 meters. And why do they have a site visibility triangle? It's to ensure that vehicular safety at an intersection. And of course, with vehicular safety, of course, comes pedestrian safety. It's really important to note that buildings, fences, trees, etc., do not interfere with or it's important with a site visibility triangle, pardon me, to ensure that buildings, fences, trees do not interfere with sight lines. In this particular case, there are a few reasons why reducing the site visibility triangle from 10 meters down to 8.5 is not a big deal. First of all, the proposed triangle does not interfere with the sight lines at the T intersection, because an 8.5 meter setback will still provide a driver with an excellent view of traffic and pedestrians at this intersection. Now, based on my experience as a planner, a 10 meter setback is exceptionally large for a site visibility triangle. In fact, many municipal zoning bylaws have a requirement between 5 meters and 9 meters. Kincardine is 7.5. South Bruce Peninsula is 6. In Owen Sound, it's 5 meters. I went to a couple bigger cities to see what they do. Kitchener is 7 meters. London is 6 meters, and we're asking for 8.5. Vehicular traffic near the Martins property is generally very slow because all automobiles approaching this T intersection, regardless of the direction they are traveling, must stop, as there are all three corners have stop signs. As such, it will seem almost impossible for a slightly reduced site visibility triangle to cause a safety problem in this particular case. On that note, don't take it from me as a planner, I spoke with a consulting engineer on this matter, and he will be submitting a letter as per town staff's request, stating that an 8.5 meter site visibility triangle is not necessary, not here and not likely anywhere. He felt that the 10 meter setback was an error and wondered out loud if maybe it should have been 10 feet and not 10 meters. What I find interesting here is any issue regarding safety at this intersection wouldn't be related to the proposal to put a new dwelling in this particular location, but the existence of the mature hedgerow along the easterly boundary of the site. If anything, that's the problem, and that can be addressed. Now, this is a technical issue, one that someone with a civil engineering degree should be looking at. And on that note, your engineer, Amanda, has looked at this site. And again, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but there's been a lot of dialogue between myself and your staff are fine with this. Staff has asked that we work with your staff that is hiring an engineer to work with your engineer to determine what that setback should be. And the Martins are fine with that. Now, with any site visibility triangle, it's important to make sure that, and this is right from your zoning bylaw, that site visibility triangle be free of any cars, buildings, planting areas or structures, and any of which, and not an a fence or a hedgerow, but nothing over 5 meters in height. That's what's important. That's to make sure that you can see everything just fine. So your engineer wants our engineer to prepare a letter identifying what the site visibility triangle should be, and that's going to happen, and that can be listed as a condition on your decision. Now, staff has also requested, and Barbara touched on this, there's a very small portion of the road allowance that encroaches, I'm sorry, a small portion of the road, the paved portion of the road that encroaches onto the subject property, and the town would like to own that land, and the Martins are fine with that as well. And they realize that any costs, surveying, legal associated with that land conveyance would be at their responsibility, not the towns, but the Martins. So just as I'm about to wrap this up, the decision sheet talks about the site visibility triangle being conveyed to the town. And I think you'll hear from staff in a minute that that's not exactly what they're looking for. There's been a lot of discussion in the last couple of working days here. What I think that, I know what the town would like to see is the land upon which the pavement exists to be conveyed to the town and sort of square that off. And then also our engineer to prepare an opinion letter stating what the site visibility triangle would be. That doesn't have to be conveyed to the town because you don't convey site visibilities to the site visibility triangles to the town, but it has to be an area that's going to be protected. So that is what I'm respectfully requesting from the town and the committee. I can go over that again if you like. Barbara has addressed the concerns with regard to drainage. There will be a lot grading and drainage plan required at the building permit stage. Parking, your bylaw says you need 2 parking spaces, and that's what's being provided. The last thing I'll say with regard to future road widening, yeah, the road is definitely not 20 meters wide, but if you take a look at that drawing that Barbara originally had up on the screen, you'll see that the road allowance further down on George Street is almost 20 meters wide. I measured it, it's close to 20 meters wide. If you ever want road widening, in my mind, it would not come from the south side of George Street, which is my client's property, and the one next door, 237, but it would come from the north side, which is 46 George Street and 234 Saugeen Beach Road. And you'd have to have that drawing in front of you to see what I'm talking about, but I would hazard a guess you would never take road widening off this side of the road, but that's not really for me to determine. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. Committee. Any questions from the committee? Ms. Quince.
Hi. I have concerns. I travel this intersection daily. I have concerns about the report that we've just heard. In my opinion, this is already a dangerous intersection, particularly because of the sight lines and also because of the fact that most cars and bikes do not stop at the 3-way stop there. Many roll through it, particularly because you can't see around the corner. So cars coming along Saugeen Beach Road, turning left towards the beach, heading north towards the town of Port Elgin and Gobles Grove, tend to roll through that intersection because they have to get past the visibility line where they can see what's coming, if anything, and then they turn. So it's generally a rolling stop in all 3 directions because there is a visibility situation. It's a narrow road and it is a heavily traveled corner with many pedestrians and particularly children walking, pulling wagons with beach toys, etc., heading from the lake or to the lake from the subdivision, the Baker subdivision. My other concern is that it really seems like there is not sufficient room for the proposed construction in addition to any future road widening or bike lane work or drainage work. There just isn't the room at that intersection. And most people in this neighborhood would agree with that from my canvassing. I am concerned that that the parking suggested, the 2 parking sites would not be sufficient for that area. It is so close to the beach. If this property were ever rented out or any visitors at all, there's nowhere for them to park. That means that they would have to park on Saugeen Beach Road, which is already narrow, and right by the stop sign, there would have to be no parking signs there, I think, installed for this to be clear that they cannot park on the road. I just don't think there's sufficient parking in this plan. The fact that the neighboring property may already be encroaching on the road or have no setback, it being like a really ancient cottage, I don't think that's relevant. I don't think we should be taking direction from a property that would be grandfathered and that had already perhaps been encroached upon by previous road widening. Bottom line is, it's a very narrow section there. It's a tight intersection. It's already dangerous. I've had a number of close calls at that intersection. As I said, I travel it daily. It's full of children, bikes, and cars, especially in the summer. It's not safe in the winter either, as wind and snow blow straight up off the lake, straight dead on up that road. I just think that the proposed visibility triangle is too small for this section, and I think the proposed construction is too close to the road. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Any other comments? Deputy Mayor Matheson.
Thank you, and I
Excuse me.
appreciate. Sure.
I mean, if this is the question period, I was sort of, Mr. Chair, I sort of ask that. I think maybe we should ask members of the public that want to provide additional
I'm sorry,
comments
yes.
rather than getting committee comments yet,
No, I'm
unless
sorry.
there are clarification questions.
I don't know if there's anybody else that's on the call right now that's with the public. Am I missing anybody?
Yes, Ben Miller here.
Oh, Mr. Miller, do you wish to address the committee, sir?
I certainly appreciate Liz's input, and she has summarized our feelings pretty strongly and well. We appreciate that, Liz. First of all, I only know a couple people on the committee, so I just want to take a chance to introduce myself. My name is Ben Miller. I've been a full-time resident of Saugeen Township and Saugeen Shores for 40 years. Our home farm is located on Highway 21 between Port Elgin and Southampton. Also joining me today on the video is my sister Sarah. And Sarah is a proud resident of London, Ontario, and Sarah and her husband David have just finished building a beautiful cottage on Shipley Ave. We are here today because our mother owns the property at 46 George Street, which is the property mentioned by Mr. Davidson, and across from the subject property, basically kitty corner from the property. This property has been in our family since 1956. And for years, we've had a growing concern over the T intersection in front of our cottage, and we are objecting to the proposed minor variance for public safety reasons, nothing else. I'd just like to take the opportunity to draw a few things to the committee's attention. Barbara has already addressed this and apologized, but the original public hearing notice had the incorrect municipal address, and this certainly led to some confusion in the neighborhood. The Planning Act application under Section 6 indicates a road width of 20 meters. The width of the street, this is where the reduction setback is being requested, is 4.91 meters. Now, the committee may not be aware, but this section of road, and it runs a couple hundred feet, it runs across the entire frontage of our property, is an original fire lane. It's never been upgraded from that original fire lane. And basically the paved surface of the road encroaches on all of the property owners along this section. I have been unable to locate a sign on the subject property identifying the request for a minor variance. It is my understanding that this is a condition of the Planning Act and that it has to be posted during the entire notification period. Also, just a very minor thing, the Town of Saugeen Shores Planning Report to the Committee of Adjustments is incorrectly dated in the future, but that's very minor. As Barbara's identified, we submitted a letter of objection to the planner on August 13th. With our letter of objection, we also submitted a real property report. Now, I don't know if everybody's familiar with real property reports, but this is a survey of our property and some of the surrounding property, identifying everything on those properties. And we felt it would have been very helpful to the committee as a visual aid in coming to some kind of conclusion on this request. It clearly identifies the narrowness of the road. Mr. Davidson has referred to a 20-meter road above on George Street. In fact, it goes from 16.12 feet to 33 feet. And then when it gets to the corner, it goes to 66 feet. It's just basically a funnel effect. I came across the decision of the committee adjustments with reasons, not realizing it was a draft today, and was quite taken back by some of the conditions I read about it. It seemed to me like the decision had been predetermined, but I realize now that is simply not the case, although it would appear there has been some negotiation between the property owner and the town. You have our letter, which outlines our concerns, so I don't think there's a need to go through them again, but most of the current concerns are in fact because of the narrowness of the road and the safety issues around that. Surely a comprehensive bylaw is designed around standard road dimensions. In this case, the minimum in the official plan is 20 meters. Even for a local road, they identify the need for at least a sidewalk on one side. So when you take 20 meters and you have to work within a space of 4.91 meters, I'm seriously questioning whether we should be allowing a reduction in that setback. This is not a setback from a normal width road. This is a setback from a road that is less than 25% of what we would consider normal. That's about all I have. Sarah, do you have anything you want to add to that? Oops, no video there, Sarah. Or no audio.
Am I good?
You're good.
Okay. One of my questions, Barbara had stated that the owner did not have a survey. And I just think it's very important that the committee have all the information they need. And I'm not sure how a decision can even be made without a survey, because you won't know exactly. I'm just thinking if he has part of the road, if the road, the part in the road that's his is 3 feet out and he's asking for 10 feet, is that then 7 feet that he's getting? And that's an even worse safety hazard, we feel. So I just feel it's very important that there be a survey requested from the owner, so the committee can even actually go down and see a visual at the site of where that building would be and what it's like in that intersection.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Any comments from the committee? Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of questions. Just to follow up on Ms. Miller's last question, is there a survey? Can Jay or Barbara?
Well, at this point, no. I mean, my answer on that would be it's at the owner's risk. If the setback is determined, if it's approved by committee to be at the requested, that's what they have to do. If they, if the building department requires a survey, they can request it, or if a committee requires one, they can make it a condition of approval.
Okay. I also wanted to mention that one of the conditions in the draft bylaw would be for the removal of 3 meters of trees on the east side of the property. And I wondered, is there anyone who's able to comment on the effect of that condition upon helping with the sightline concerns?
Mr. Davidson?
Certainly. So if I may, the first question about the survey, if this application is approved, the applicant will be required to dedicate the paved portion of the road allowance that is on their property to the town. So a survey will be done, has to be done. There's no other way to convey the land. Secondly, in my mind, your biggest concern should very well be the trees along the lot line that go right up to the stop sign. That's if there's an issue here with regard to site visibility, it's not a building that maintains an 8.5 meter setback, because again, maybe you should have your engineer chime in. That's not the issue. It would be, in my mind, the trees. So yes, they should be removed so you can get a proper sight line at that intersection.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, that's not the condition. It's not asking for the removal of the trees along the Saugeen Beach. It's just at 3 meters within 3 meters of the intersection. That's what I've read in the draft condition.
Okay.
Nevertheless, it occurred to me that this it's one of the tangible improvements to the safety of this intersection is moving the parking that's very close to the existing stop sign on George Street heading east, and moving it as far as possible on the Saugeen Beach side to the south on the Saugeen Beach Road side. So that is a tangible safety improvement, though I'm happy to defer to Amanda if she's got, because it's a normal piece of advice we give to developers looking to develop, say, restaurants that are on busy intersections. We say, make sure the access is far from the intersection as possible. And so this one improvement to the site that's as a result of this request.
Yeah, I'll agree through you, Mr. Chair, with Jay on that one. The parking is in much better location, being as far to the south as possible compared to being near the bend. The 3 meter tree clearing, I'll just speak to that too. That's the same thing. At the end of driveways in most municipalities, they have a 3 meter wide visibility triangle that you don't plant vegetation on. And because you're at a 3-way stop here, the 3 meters is where we would like to see the vegetation removed. It's not necessarily going to be what's conveyed to the town, but even if it was a normal visibility triangle, there's no easements or anything like that needed in that area. We just apply that standard.
Ms. Rose, I have a question. Is there any plans for the road to be widened in the near future, or sidewalks added?
This is in that area that we talk about, the George Street storm outlet and sanitary sewers. So that's a really large project that is in the millions of dollars. So that's the one that we're looking to wait for provincial funding on, that we periodically talk through. So that would be when this road widening comes through. But when we looked at this property, engineering looked at where that road widening would need to be, and it is more to the north. That would make that storm sewer and that function. So at this time, we didn't see a need to ask for a road widening on this property.
Thank you. Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I can go back to the hedgerow, I'm not sure I understand. Condition number 7 says that the existing hedgerow be cut back 3 meters from the intersection prior to issuance of a building permit. So where is that? It's not the one that is by the intersection?
Sorry, it is. I guess maybe I misheard you the first time. I was thinking it was the entire hedgerow that we were talking about, because it's all within 3 meters of that road allowance. You are right, Councillor Grace. I think the reason the condition is worded the way it is, and the reason why it says specifically before building permit, is that we know the conveyance of the land takes time. And so this condition we recommended was a means to allow the construction to proceed, make sure the hedgerow is removed before construction, but we could work on the transfer of the land over a period of weeks, however long it takes for surveyors and so on to measure and eventually transfer the land. And I maybe I should have been more clear up front about that.
Okay, I have, going back to my question then, is 3 meters enough? Is removal of 3 meters of trees there enough? Maybe Amanda could answer that for, you know, a sight line that would be safe.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that I do believe 3 meters is enough for the tree removal to provide that clear spacing or clear view.
Deputy Mayor Mathis.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody who's came on board tonight to put up their thoughts. I kind of like this development, and I believe that the pruning back of the trees, it's a three-way stop, and it is a very tricky corner. I go down there all the time on my bike, and I understand what Mr. Miller's saying. But I believe if we prune those trees back, it is a three-way stop, it'll increase the sight lines. I think this is a viable project, so I will be supporting it with those conditions.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Rich.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I've heard a couple of concerns about parking. What's the requirements with regard to parking, Jay?
Yes, the applicant's required to have 2 spaces per lot, and they can show that there. I'm not sure we're in a position to ask for more, given the bylaw only requires 2.
No, I'm not asking for more. I'm just curious.
Okay. Yes, so
Two
2 spaces for the
I thought it
dwelling.
was 2. I wanted to follow up and make sure it was 2. So 3 meters is quite a bit of an additional distance that this is going to be jutting over, and it used to be 6, and now it's 3. Do you think that there's, I'll ask this of the planner, is there any way that this house can be configured differently where we might be able to get maybe a little bit closer to 6 meters? Obviously, there are some safety concerns. I like seeing people try and kind of, you know, compromise a little bit and maybe come up with a solution that can work for everyone, as opposed to saying just straight no today or yes.
Is that question asked of me, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, so I've spent a lot of time on this application, especially in the last week, trying to rejig things, working with your staff, trying to shift the building one way or another. The bottom line is it's a small building envelope, and the applicant they have made it smaller from when I originally was retained, a little bit smaller to make it fit into the exterior side yard. And the bottom line is they feel that they've gone as far as they care to without making the house just too small.
Okay, it's unfortunate because like 10 feet's quite a bit. So like to ask for in a variance, it was, you know, I don't mind variances of a couple feet or even 3 feet. That's starting to, you know, sort of push into a range that I become uncomfortable with. And I think that we've covered the hedge well enough now that we're all in agreement that the hedge will have to be cut back a minimum of 3 meters. That question goes to Amanda. I just want confirmation, that's all.
Yeah, I think the 3 meters is great for the hedge, John, and the road portion through being the conveyance. I think that corner will be safer, and I think that from engineering, we're satisfied with those conditions that way.
Thanks. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Mr. Legault.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. This question's for Mr. Davidson. Is there an opportunity to move the parking so that it would be further away from that corner?
The parking is as far away from the corner as possibly they can make it. It's at the southeast corner of the site. That's the proposed.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got another question about parking, and that's going back to one of the points raised by Ms. Kuntz. And so the question is about parking on the street. And I guess, Amanda, maybe we could ask you to comment about that. Is it possible for us to put some no parking signs along George Street or somewhere else. I mean, I can certainly understand concerns about on-street parking there with that tight intersection. Is that something we could consider?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can put signs up that are the no parking here at the intersection, because the bylaw has no parking within 9 meters of an intersection. But we would have to make sure the parking bylaw has no parking if you wanted to do it outside that 9 meters to the intersection, because on-street parking would be allowed.
Councillor Rich.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to give the planner an opportunity too. So we're talking about minor variances. So I just want to clarify, make sure I understand correctly. Normally we require a 6 meter setback, and this is a 3 meter setback, which is half. Can you explain to me why that is minor, as opposed to, like, I don't know what would constitute a major variance if half the setback is still minor.
Well, I'm not sure Barbara's on the call. It was, oh, there she is. There.
Yes, if I may defer to Mr. Davidson.
Absolutely. So there are 4 tests, without getting into each one of them. There are 4 tests of a minor variance, and none of those tests pertain to numbers. It's not the formerly known as the Ontario Municipal Board, or now the LPAT. They're not going to necessarily refuse an application based on the fact that it's 50% of what the reduction, or I'm sorry, there's a 50% reduction or a 75% reduction. It's the taking a look at the intent of the purpose of the zoning bylaw, the intent and purpose of the official plan. It doesn't make for an overall desirable development on the property, and the overall impact that it's going to have. But whether or not it's the numerical part of a minor variance is really not a relevant part of this discussion.
Any further comments? If not, would one of the committee members like to make a motion? Deputy Mayor Matheson. Would that be for the approval of for the project subject to the
yes, approval of the, exactly, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Sorry, I was on mute.
That's fine. Is there a seconder for that motion? There's no seconder for that motion. Does someone wish to make an alternative motion? Councillor Rich.
Well, I'd make a motion that they come back with a proposal that gets us a lot closer to 20 feet away from an intersection. I think that's going to be, I mean, the hedge is going to be part of the restrictive line. And I know this doesn't really fall into a motion, but the hedge is going to be restrictive. And I think that we've moved the house too close to the road. So I think that if I would like to see it tabled or returned, and maybe work with the developer and try and see if we can maybe get it a little bit further from the road to address safety concerns and ensure that the needs of the community are met in that regard. So I don't know, how does that work in a motion? To table it or to ask them to come back with adjustments that are more conducive to the safety of the community?
You can certainly write out a motion and, for that, for whatever desires that you have to have this to seek out further changes to the proposal. If you had a seconder for that, is there a seconder for Mr. Rich's motion? Ms. Kuntz is seconding that motion. So would you please restate your motion, Mr. Rich, please?
To ask the developer, I move that we ask the developer to come back with changes which will increase the setback from the road at the intersection to address the safety concerns of the community.
That was seconded by Member Kuntz for that. Any discussion about the motion? Deputy Mayor Matheson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we're a little off on what we're doing here. There's already a established house there. The biggest problem with the corner is the trees. All the neighbors say the cars roll through there. That is not the proponent's problem. That is a municipal bylaw problem. We need to have the police there. The house is already there. We grant variances all the time. Our county has approved this, and we've already asked for the one thing that needs to be fixed, which many of the letters that came in asked for, was to improve the visibility at the intersection. So I will not be supporting the motion to amend. I think we have already enough that we should have gone forward with it at that moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Matheson. Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Those opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Our next meeting date is to be confirmed on Monday, September the 21st, 2020. And may I have a move to adjourn, please? As moved by Councilor Deputy Mayor Matheson, seconded by Councilor Rich. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you for your participation, everyone.